Hi class, this is your instructor Megan, and in this video I want to talk about blogs and categories, which is a system for sorting blogs. So you've already created the homepage of a website, and the next thing you're going to do is create the blog page for that website, and that's where a lot of your content for your content strategy is going to live. So let's talk about how that works. So in this lesson we're going to talk about blogs, their role in content strategy, what goes on a blog, and how blogs are organized. So first of all, what are blogs? Well, I think most of you are pretty familiar with blogs. The term blog is just a shortening of the term weblogs, or web logs, like web diaries. This term came about in the 90s. People sort of got sick of saying weblogs, so we just shortened it to blog or blogs. And blogs are sites where there's a continuously moving stream of content, where there's new content all the time. The homepage of your client site is not a blog. It may show some elements from the blog, but overall, a lot of what you see there is going to be pretty much the same throughout the year. The concept of a blog is to have updates. It's almost like a journalistic pursuit where there's new information and new content continuously updated. So this gives people a reason to go back to your website. If you don't have a blog, if you just have a website and someone goes to it and they learn everything they want to know about your organization, why would they ever go back to your website? They wouldn't. So a blog is a way of getting people to continuously connect with your company, to remember that you exist, to form a relationship with you, to go to your site multiple times and not just once. So that's why we think about blogs when we think about content strategy for public relations and marketing. Now, what is the role of blogs in content strategy? David Meerman Scott tells us that there's 4 ways of thinking about blogs as PR professionals. The first and second are really similar. They really go together. The first is to monitor what people are saying about you, and the second is to participate in those conversations by commenting, and we'll look at an example of that on the next slide. You also can work with bloggers who write about your industry, company, or products, and you guys know about this. This is media relations. You guys have studied the idea of writing press releases and sending them to journalistic outlets to try to get your PR messaging into the media. You can do that with blogs as well. I have a friend who owns their own PR firm, and one thing they do is they write press releases and they specifically shop them around to bloggers. And they know that they're successful when they see their PR messaging and their press release information on blogs. So this is just the same idea as media relations, except instead of sending your press releases to journalistic outlets that publish in print, you're sending your press releases to bloggers, which means you have to identify who the popular bloggers are in your industry. You also can use blogs to shape the conversation about you and your field by creating and writing your own blog. And when you do this, your goal really is thought leadership. And thought leadership, you guys have studied before, it's exactly what it sounds like. Leadership of thought. Positioning your brand or your client as a leader, as a thought leader, as an innovative thinker, as the people who are leading the industry because they're so smart. That's what thought leadership is about. So you can create a blog to get people to see your brand as the leader, to see your brand as the people who are inventing the new ways of doing things. I hate to use the word innovative too much because it's kind of a buzzword, a throwaway word, but that's kind of what you're going for here. You want your blog not just to talk about yourself, you want to talk about your industry. You want to be a thought leader. A friend of mine who works in digital media, she does social media for clients, she uses a 70-30 mix. So on her blogs and in her social media for her clients, she publishes 30% of the content about the client, and 70% of the content is actually not about the client at all, but rather about the industry and their thoughts on the industry. So when you write a blog, it's not about tooting your own horn, it's about your company, your brand, your client, showing that they're leaders by weighing in on questions of the day or weighing in on new trends. So we'll take a look at some of these. But first, let's back up and look at 1 and 2, monitoring and participating. This is an excellent skill for all PR professionals, and I highly suggest that you guys take my social media class, CCIM 280, because you're going to learn about this idea of monitoring and participating in blogs. This is the idea that as a PR professional, you're not talking all the time online. You're going to spend a lot of your time listening. The friend I just talked about who runs blogs and social media for clients and publishes only 30% of content that talks about themselves and 70% of content that talks about the field. She spends most of her day monitoring and participating. So she's on Twitter the entire time she's at work, waiting for people to mention her companies, and then she tweets those people back. So I want to talk about a local example. We here in Muncie actually have a really stellar example of monitoring and participating in the blogosphere. Scott Wise, who owns Scottys Brewhouse, opened the first Scottys Brewhouse in 1996 here in Muncie. It's still here for those of you who are out of town. And he's now franchised Scottys Brewhouses out into other cities in Indiana. I think he has something like 7 locations. But what Scott Wise is known for in the marketing and PR industry here, or field here in the Midwest, is that he doesn't spend money on advertising. You'll never see a Scottys Brewhouse ad in the paper. You'll never see a TV commercial for Scottys Brewhouse. You'll never hear a radio spot for Scottys Brewhouse. Scott Wise does not spend money on advertising. He relies 100% on digital advertising, word of mouth advertising in the blogosphere and on social media, and word of mouth in person. And he does this by monitoring and participating in the blogosphere, the conversation that's happening on blogs. He's very well known for this. He's been covered in a lot of top tier media for his strategies here. So I want to show you how this works. I've actually talked to Scott Wise about this. I wrote an article about him for M Magazine a couple years ago. I went to his office. I observed him work for a couple hours and we talked about what he does. And here's what he does. He has Google Alerts. So Google has a system called Google Alerts. You tell Google what you want to listen for. You give it keywords. So you can say something like, hey Google, anytime someone mentions Scottys Brewhouse, you need to tell me about it. And you'll get an email anytime someone publishes a blog that mentions Scottys Brewhouse. So this is what he does. And I have seen him work. He is obsessed with it. This is his jam. This is what he loves to do. I mean, he obviously loves to be a restaurateur, but he also loves the social media. So he's really into getting these alerts. And when he gets an alert, he writes on the blog. So we're looking at 2 examples down here in the bottom right of blogs that wrote about Scottys Brewhouse. And you might look at them and think to yourself, I don't know those blogs. But keep in mind, people are not going to go to these blogs. They're going to go to Google and they're going to type in Scottys Brewhouse Review. And if you go to Google and you type in Scottys Brewhouse Review, you're going to find these 2 blogs, among other blogs. So it's really smart of him to keep his ear on the ground, even with the small blogs. And these are 2 sites that have written about the Scottys Brewhouse experience. And the way Scott Wise has this set up is he gets an alert as soon as these are published. So as soon as this review right here got published, he got an alert and he was able to write a response. I'm going to show you this blog and this response. Okay, just take a second to read this blog. I'll read the title, I Just Don't Get Scottys Brewhouse. There's so many things I don't get about Scottys Brewhouse that I'm not even sure where to start. First of all, why are diners provided with rolled up bathroom face towels instead of napkins? That's just gimmicky and weird. Why is their menu designed to look like a fake issue of Sports Illustrated magazine? The thing contains way too many pages. So this person is clearly upset. They're not happy with Scottys Brewhouse. They don't like it and they're giving a negative review. They even say, I got a bad feeling as soon as they walked into the restaurant. So this is a bad review, but keep in mind, Scott Wise gets an email anytime someone publishes a review, whether it's bad or good. So he sees this bad review, and you'll see down at the bottom, he actually has written a comment. So this article was published, does it have a date on it? This bad review was given December 6th, and the very next day, December 7th, Scotty had written a response, and here's his response in the comments here. And just take a second to read his response. What he does is he says, thank you for taking the time to review our restaurant. He talks about the napkins. He talks about the menu. He says he tries very hard to make his food extraordinary. He says he's going to, respect the opinions and try to sort out what's going on here. And he's very respectful. He even signs off and says, I wish you luck in your future blogging. Respectfully, Scotty. Identifies himself as the owner. He is able to take his own brand messaging and put it on this page. So anyone who Googles Scottys Brewhouse review and finds this negative review, if they scroll down, they'll see that the owner is very respectfully disagreeing and try to address some of the issues, which puts Scottys Brewhouse in a positive light. So this is a brilliant tactic. And this is a tactic, as you can see, this is 4 years old, that Scott Wise has used for a very long time and is very well known for. And this is why you want to monitor and participate in the blogosphere. You don't want someone to find this blog and only see negative. You want them to come into the comments and see, oh, you know what? This owner, he's not some absentee owner who's just trying to make money. This is a guy who cares about his brew house. This is a guy who cares, and he's here to talk about some of the issues addressed. Let's look at this Seagull Media example. This is not a negative review. This is just someone who posted a bunch of photos about their experience at Scottys Brewhouse. So I'll just sort of scroll past the photos. They're actually pretty good photos. They're kind of interesting. Lots of different kinds of things he's photographed. And you can see because Scotty is listening in Google Alerts, listening for any time a review is given, he's able to write here with his picture, "This is phenomenal, thank you, the pictures are beautiful." So this is a really great PR strategy. It shows people that Scotty Wise cares about his business. He's not some guy who lives in New York who just makes money off these restaurants. He's a community member. He cares what people think. He wants his restaurant to be a good experience, and he cares about the customer enough to look at their pictures and thank them for those pictures. So this is an excellent example of monitoring and participating in the blogosphere. So David Meerman Scott is spot on when he says we need to monitor and participate. Well, in this class, you're going to do number 4. You're going to begin to shape the conversation by creating and writing your own blog. And this is basically performing thought leadership. So I have 2 examples down here. On the left, a blog by Eric Ries, an author. On the right, a blog by Edelman. That's a name you should all know. If you don't know it, go look it up now. Edelman is an international PR firm. We have graduates who work there, so if you know about Edelman and you start trying to get interested in it, I can put you in touch with someone who works there and you can learn more about it. Hint, 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 this is how you get a job in PR, so you should know about it. But on the left, Eric Ries is an author. He has worked with a lot of startups. He's a CTO, former Chief Technology Officer, so he's a technologist, a programmer. He works with tech startups. He wrote a book called The Lean Startup. And he has a blog, Startup Lessons Learned, where he talks about what he's learned as a CTO. So the message here, even if you don't read the blog posts, is that Eric Ries isn't just some jerk who wrote a book and wants to make tons of money. Eric Ries is a guy who has passion for startups, who wrote a book and is also willing to help you by giving his content away for free on his blog. That forms an excellent relationship between the audience and Mr. Ries and convinces people to listen to him and to buy his books. On the right, Edelman, 6 a.m., a blog about PR, again, trends in communications, as well as issues, lessons, and insights gathered from their president and CEO. So this is Edelman saying, you know what, we have a lot of secrets, we're great at PR, but we're going to share them with you. We're not just some jerks trying to make a bunch of money. We love PR. We're so excited about it that we will give our secrets away. We will talk about the lessons we've learned, and we will help other PR professionals. Both great pieces of content strategy, both great ways of showing thought leadership and forming relationships with audiences. This is what you are going to do as your assignment this lesson, is create a blog that emphasizes thought leadership. Now there's 2 ways of presenting a blog. You can have an internal blog that is part of the client's main website, or you can have an external blog that is a different website altogether. So let's look at an example. Make-A-Wish America has an internal blog. This is their navigation bar right here. Wishes, About Us, Local Chapters, Refer a Child, and then there's more. This is actually covering up where the blog is, but you click the Refer a Child, or no, you click, I think it's Ways to Help. This is a little messed up here. And you get a drop down and it says Blogger Center. So you click on Blogger Center and you go here. You never leave the site. You start here, you click a navigation item, you end up here, and you can see that it has the same logo and the same header. Wishes, About Us, Local Chapters, Wishes, About Us, Local Chapters. Refer a Child, Ways to Help. Refer a Child, Ways to Help. So you never leave the site. This is a blog that's part of the main site. This is an internal blog. This is what you are going to make. You already made a home page. Now you're going to make a blog page, and you're going to set up the blog on that page. This is an external site where the blog is totally different. The Indianapolis Museum of Art, this is their website on the left, this is their blog on the right. It doesn't look the same, it has a different logo, it has a different header. It's not meant to be part of this main website. The blog is much more specific to museum professionals, whereas the website is for visitors, so they've kept it separate. So you're going to make that internal blog where you're going to have a button in your navigation bar that's going to take people to the blog on the same site you already made. Let's talk about what goes on a blog. The blog has to show the content that achieves your strategy. So content strategy is all about content that solves buyer problems. This is where you're going to put most of it, is on the blog. And what you're going to do is you're going to sort that content into categories. Categories are a sorting mechanism for blog content. So every article, whether it's written or a photo or a video, is assigned a category, and visitors can select the category that helps them the most. So what you want to do when you plan your blog is come up with the categories first, and then create content that both achieves your strategy objectives and fits those categories. So you really have to think about categories that are oriented around a problem that the visitor has. I would suggest making a list of what your client is an expert at and how they can help your buyers, and creating categories based on that. So think about what your client knows that other people don't know and how that can help buyers. Each category also should use language the visitor understands, so no jargon that they're not going to know. And each category should provide value. There shouldn't be a category that doesn't do anything. For your client blog, you really need to think about what kind of content in that content repository helps your buyer, and then create categories around that. So what do your buyers, and you can go back to those personas, what do they need or want to know in order to be successful that you can give them on this blog? All right, so let's look at some examples of solving buyers' problems. This is a great site. I hate to keep bringing it up because it's IU, and Ball State is clearly way, way, way better. I think actually this semester I have someone who graduated from IU, so sorry, Ball State's better. I teach there. I'm required, I think, by law to say that Ball State is better. So no offense to those of you who may have studied at IU. I'm contractually obligated to sell and market Ball State in everything that I do. Not really, but I'm in PR. I must do it. So We Are IU is actually a really, really great site. This is a blog that solves buyers' problems. So one issue that we have in higher education is we make these websites that are boring and make college look boring. If you go to bsu.edu, it makes Ball State look like the most boring thing ever. And it's not even that bad of a college website. There's some college websites that make the college look like the most boring thing on the planet, if not the universe. We Are IU is an answer to that problem. We Are IU is specifically for high school students, so it's for a target buyer, a certain persona, high school students. And what they've done that's just brilliant, so props to anyone who went to IU, I'm giving you some credit here on your school's brilliant content strategy. What they've done that's brilliant is they've made this site that is totally geared towards high school students. Think about what you experienced when you were in high school. It wasn't that long ago for most of you. When you were thinking about applying to college, what were your problems? What were you scared of? What were your questions? What did you need help with? Well, weareiu.com is the answer to all of that. It's the answer to your problems, it's the solution to your problems, and the answer to your questions. And we just need to look at the categories to understand how that works. So here's some questions high school students have. Here are their problems. Number one, will I even like college life? Is college life for me? So there's a category on the site called college life, and all of the articles in that category are about how college life is different from high school and how you can make the most of it and how it's really fun and exciting, especially if you go to IU. High school students often wonder about joining a Greek organization. So We Are IU has a category for sororities and a category for fraternities, and these two categories contain articles that explain what sororities and fraternities are. They explain the philanthropy they engage in, and they explain how you get involved in those organizations. So that's solving high school kids' problem of not knowing if they should join one of those groups. Will a person make friends? So one concern is, will I make friends in college? So there's a tab for diversity at IU to help people understand if there's people like them at IU. I know that I'm personally a vegan, and so it's hard for me. I don't eat out a lot, especially around Muncie, because there's not a lot of vegan food. So it's nice to know that there's going to be vegan people who understand my dietary restrictions and know how to make good food for me and share that food with me at the school that I go to. You know, it's nice for me to know that Ball State has vegan options. It makes me much more comfortable about coming to work here every day. So if I was a high school student, I would feel a lot more comfortable about going to a school that claimed to understand vegans. So if you have a specific group that you're part of, you know, if you grew up in a Spanish-speaking household, it would be helpful to know that there's other Spanish-speaking people at IU who are going to be able to have conversations with you and sort of understand where you're coming from. So the Diversity at IU tab, that category has content just celebrating the different experiences of students and letting people know that there are going to be people like you here, but there are going to be people that are different from you, but that's going to be great. And then college life is a lot different, so high school students worry about adjusting. Will I be able to adjust to college life? So the Welcome Week, Orientation, and Freshman Year categories have all kinds of content that let those high school kids know it's going to be okay. And these categories offer tips for adjusting. So this is a really great site, solves buyers' problems. Let's move on and look at the Zillow blog. This is, Zillow is a product that it's basically for housing and rental listings. You can go to Zillow, you can find houses that are for sale, you can find houses that are for rent, apartments for rent, but they have a blog. And take a look at their blog real quick. You can see that they are providing content specific to their buyers. So if their site is all about helping people find houses to buy and houses and apartments to rent, what are people's concerns? Their buyers are people who are looking for real estate. So what are people who are looking for real estate? What are their concerns? Well, how do I buy a house? I bought a house in September, and no one tells you how to buy a house. I never learned how to buy a house. I had to look it up. I had to call my parents. I had to ask for advice from people at work. I had to Google how to buy a house. It's not that simple. So Zillow has a specific category, tips and advice, all about how to buy a house. How do I improve my house? Maybe I'm selling my house and I'm going to Zillow because I want to put my house in the list of available houses. So I want to know, how do I make my house more attractive? So there's a home improvement category. And then there's a category for market trends that help me understand how I can sell my house for the most money. So if decks are really in right now, I want to know that, and Zillow's going to tell me that in the market trends section, and I can go buy a deck for my house before I sell it so I can mark the price up. How do I make my house stand out? There's a whole unique homes category to help me understand that. So you can see from the categories how the content solves buyers' problems. And this site, this is a nice example because there's different buyers here. There's house sellers, house buyers, and house renters. So three different buyers, three different buyer audiences. We all get our problems solved with the content on this blog. And what's interesting about Zillow is they actually have a couple blogs. They have the Zillow blog we just looked at for the public, but they also have a blog for pros. And who are pros when it comes to real estate? Real estate agents and rental managers. So there's only two categories on this blog. Content that's going to help real estate pros sell more real estate, and content that's going to help rental pros sell more rentals. So we only have two categories. So I hope that helps you understand sort of the purpose of blogs, what kind of content you put on it, and how the categories help organize the content and help people who are visiting your blog understand how the content can help them. Now, how do you make categories in WordPress? This is something we haven't learned yet, so let's take a look. I am signed into one of my WordPress sites, and you'll see here under posts, I can click categories and I can create categories. So I've already got product design and news. Let's put design advice, startups, and I don't know, Industry leaders. That's a terrible category, but I'm not focusing on good categories. I'm focusing on how to show you categories. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to post categories, you're going to type in the name, and then all you have to do is click add new category. And your categories are going to stack up over here on the right. So these categories are now available to me. If I create a post, I'm going to go to posts, add new. I can type in my title. I can type in my information, which you can get from the content repository, and over on the right I can say what category this particular content goes into. So then I can click publish, and that post will be associated with the industry leaders category. Now I need to solve the problem of helping people see my categories, so I have two strategies. I can put the categories in the navigation bar, or I can put the categories in the sidebar. So I'll show you putting categories in the nav bar. If I want to put categories in my nav bar, I'm going to go to Appearance, Menus, and from the left I can choose a category and I can add these to the menu. And maybe I want to do something like this. I want to put these all under the blog. If I stack them up under blog a little bit to the right, that's going to turn this into a drop down. So there we go. I'm going to click Save Menu. Let's take a little look-see at my site. And you'll see I have blog, industry leaders, design advice, news, product design, startups. So these are all my categories. And if I click on industry leaders, I'll see only the blog posts that deal with industry leaders. Now, if I don't want my categories here on the menu bar, I could put them in the sidebar. So to put them in the sidebar, I'm going to go to Widgets, and I'm just going to grab Categories and put it in the sidebar. I'm going to call it Blog Categories. Save it. Refresh my page, and you'll see I now have blog categories in the sidebar. Now, my blog categories are not showing up. It doesn't show industry leaders. It doesn't show product design. That's because I haven't put any posts there yet. So I only see the categories that have posts. So you'll need to, for your homework, grab content from the content repository and make sure make sure every category has at least one piece of content so that your categories will show up on the sidebar. That's everything I wanted to talk about for blogs and categories. I think that pretty much covers it all. Your assignment is to create your blog page, develop your categories, put some content from the content repository onto your blog page so it doesn't look empty, and turn that in along with your homepage.